Picture this: 2,000 ships, 3,200 vessels of all flags and sizes frozen in place, engines running, cargo rotting, crews stranded under an open sky. Welcome to the Strait of Hormuz in the spring of 2026, a 33-kilometer choke point that has become the most dangerous stretch of water on Earth. 20% of the world's oil used to flow through here every single day. Used to, because right now it does not. One nation has done what it always threatened to do. It has turned the keys of the global economy and refused to give them back. And here is where it gets truly remarkable. Instead of collapsing, instead of surrendering, instead of waiting for a diplomatic miracle that may never come, the world pressed a different button entirely. 3 massive projects, one blasting through mountains, one crossing deserts on steel rails, one threading through an entire peninsula with pipelines, are already rewriting the rules of global trade. And once they are done, the greatest strategic card held by that nation will never be playable again. Let us start with the crisis itself, because to understand why these projects matter, you need to understand exactly how deep this hole is. On March 2nd, 2026, the strait was formally closed to non-national shipping. This was not a threat. This was not a warning shot. This was the real thing. The move came in direct response to a coordinated military campaign launched just days earlier. And it sent shockwaves through every commodity market, every shipping company, and every government on the planet. According to official energy data, roughly 20 million barrels of oil per day had been passing through the strait before the conflict. Overnight, that flow stopped. A major energy company confirmed that exports from its primary Gulf export terminal, handling roughly 5.5 million barrels per day, had been effectively shut off. The company warned that it only had adequate inventories to maintain flows, provided the war did not persist in the long term. Freight rates exploded. Oil prices surged above $100 per barrel within days. The International Maritime Organization reported thousands of vessels effectively immobilized in or around the strait, with maritime tracking data identifying 27 very large crude carriers lined up at one alternative terminal alone, desperately waiting to load oil rerouted through the Red Sea. Another group in a neighboring country had already demonstrated in previous years that the southern entrance to the Red Sea was well within their range. According to regional news reports, attacks on shipping had targeted more than 170 vessels before a ceasefire was reached in May 2025. That ceasefire has since shown cracks. In other words, the world was caught in a vice, a grip tightening from 2 directions at once. And yet, right at this moment of maximum pressure, something extraordinary is happening. The world is not waiting to be rescued. It is building its own escape routes, 3 of them, each one more audacious than the last. Let us begin with the project that has captured the imagination of engineers, strategists, and dreamers around the world: the Mountain Canal. The concept is simple to state and almost impossible to believe. Carve a waterway directly through some of the most rugged terrain on Earth. Link the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman without ever touching the waters controlled by the nation that closed the strait. Allow the world's largest supertankers to sail through a mountain range, a jagged finger of land controlled by a neutral country that juts northward into the strait, sitting between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. In some places, the gap between the 2 bodies of water is just a few dozen miles. On a map, it looks almost effortless. Then you look at the terrain. The mountains do not cooperate. According to multiple engineering assessments, the range rises to 3,000 meters in places with limestone peaks that soar more than 6,500 feet from the coastline. Concept videos circulating online show a clean 32-kilometer corridor, 25 meters deep, 300 meters wide, with 3 massive lock systems balancing the sea level difference. The price tag mentioned somewhere between $100 billion and $300 billion, with the lower estimates considered wildly optimistic by most independent engineers. Here is the harder truth that the viral videos do not tell you. An analysis published by a regional news outlet found that a canal bypassing the strait would require not 3 lock systems, but potentially hundreds, between 240 and 400, depending on lift dimensions, with each individual lock structure comparable in scale to some of the world's largest dams. As engineers put it, the main barrier is not political will or money, it is the mountain itself. The range is 100 kilometers wide. Crossing it with a canal capable of handling very large crude carriers would require moving more rock than all human construction projects in history combined. There is also a water problem. Unlike the Panama Canal, which sits in one of the wettest regions on Earth and uses a massive natural lake, this mountain range is arid desert at altitude. Every lock cycle would require pumping enormous volumes of seawater upward at tremendous energy cost. The fees charged to ships would have to be staggering just to break even. The conclusion of nearly every serious engineering review published in early 2026 is the same. The canal remains for now more dream than deliverable. As one analysis summarized plainly, all things considered, a canal bypassing the strait is not a practical solution. A second overland pipeline or a new pipeline through another country would be built faster, cost less, and carry more oil per dollar spent. But here is what matters strategically. The idea is alive. The conversation has started. One defense journal proposes a more realistic version, a 116-kilometer cross-peninsula corridor connecting one port on the Gulf side to another port on the Gulf of Oman side. Shorter, more manageable, and potentially capable of carrying 20 to 25 million barrels per day at full build-out. A project estimated at $70 to $100 billion and requiring 10 to 15 years of sustained commitment. That is not cheap. But compared to the trillions of dollars that a permanent closure could destroy, it starts to look less like a luxury and more like the most important insurance policy in history. And while engineers debate the mountain canal, another project is not waiting for anyone's permission. It is already under construction. What we are about to walk through is one of the most consequential infrastructure decisions of the 21st century. And it is happening right now under almost no media coverage in the deserts of a nation long ravaged by war. It is called the Development Road, and it may be the most important trade corridor on Earth that most people have never heard of. Here are the basic facts. A 1,200-kilometer combined railway and highway network starting at a massive new port on the Persian Gulf, running north through several major cities, crossing into a neighboring country at a border crossing, connecting through that country's existing networks to its European frontier, and from there into the European Union's customs zone. Total project cost initially announced at $17 billion, with revised estimates now placing the full figure closer to $23.9 billion. Expected economic boost approximately $50 billion and over 60,000 jobs. And here is what makes this different from every other Middle Eastern mega project you have heard about and forgotten. This one has momentum. In April 2024, a regional leader visited the capital of the host nation, his first visit in 13 years, and signed a quadrilateral memorandum of understanding with 3 other countries. The financing model has been agreed. The design is complete. On December 5, 2025, the host nation's prime minister personally inaugurated the first 63 kilometers of asphalt stretching from the new port toward a nearby town. In his remarks at the ceremony, the Prime Minister described the project as embodying a vision to transition his nation from a rent-based economy to one that actively supports agriculture, industry, and trade. An international development bank approved a $930 million railway modernization project for the country, with the bank's regional director stating that enhanced trade and connectivity can stimulate growth, create jobs, and reduce oil dependency. The strategic logic of the development road in the context of the crisis is almost brutally simple. Ships can be mined, missiles can sink tankers, drones can swarm a strait. But a railway running under the desert, a highway flanked by security infrastructure, those are a different kind of asset entirely. According to an international road transport union, an inland shipment from one European country to a Gulf nation via this new corridor was completed in just 12 days. The comparable multimodal route via the Red Sea and Suez Canal takes 21 days. The development road, when fully operational, aims to move 7.5 million containers and 33 million tons of bulk cargo per year through this overland corridor. For the Gulf, this means oil, gas, and container cargo leaving the Persian Gulf need not enter the strait at all. They transfer at the new port onto trains, and they are in Europe in under 2 weeks. The neighboring country rises as the indispensable land bridge between East and West. The host nation reclaims the geopolitical role that decades of war destroyed. 2 other Gulf nations cement their positions as strategic investors, and Europe gains a direct overland artery to the world's largest energy reserves that no missile can reach. There are complications. Proxy forces inside the host nation have already attacked military bases of the neighboring country. The Kurdish question remains unresolved. The northern region's political geography is fractured, and the exclusion of a regional government from the project's core structure has drawn criticism. As one regional council noted, the development road's success requires the host nation to get its political house in order, and that nation's politics have rarely cooperated with strategic ambition. But the arrow has left the bow. The first road is paved. The development bank is invested. The neighboring country has begun its domestic preparations. And the four-country financing consortium has its signatures in ink. Now let us pivot to the third project. And this one carries the highest political voltage of all, because this is not just an infrastructure proposal. It is a geopolitical realignment wrapped in steel pipe. And at its center stands one of the most polarizing leaders in the world. Speaking at a press conference with foreign media, a national leader laid out what he called the only sustainable long-term answer to the crisis. Instead of passing through choke points, he said, we can build pipelines westward through the Arabian Peninsula to our nation's Mediterranean ports and effectively eliminate these choke points. He elaborated in an interview, long-term solutions include rerouting energy pipelines westward across a major neighboring kingdom to the Red Sea and Mediterranean, bypassing the geographic choke point. The plan, as reported by multiple financial and regional outlets, involves a pipeline network originating in the vast oil fields of that major kingdom and another Gulf state. The oil would cross the desert, entering the leader's nation via a third country or directly across the kingdom's territory, and arrive at Mediterranean ports. From there, it flows directly into European energy markets. No strait, no southern Red Sea choke point, no Suez Canal. The entire maritime choke point architecture simply becomes irrelevant. The leader's nation's positioning here is deliberate and calculated. For years, officials from that nation have promoted a broader economic corridor, first unveiled at a G20 summit in September 2023. That initiative already maps out an integrated network of ports, rail lines, and pipelines connecting a major Asian power to Europe through several Gulf states, the major kingdom, a neighboring Arab nation, and the leader's country. In that framework, the Mediterranean port route was always the western terminus. The war has not created this idea. It has turbocharged it. But there is a wall, and its name is the major kingdom. As one financial newspaper reported, that kingdom has so far stayed on the sidelines. Despite what one senior Gulf energy executive called the genius masterstroke of an existing east-west pipeline that is currently serving as the kingdom's lifeline, the capital has not publicly embraced a pipeline route through the leader's nation. The stalled normalization process between the kingdom and the leader's nation, which suffered a severe setback after October 2023, continues to cast a long shadow. As a regional environmental peace executive told a local news outlet, officials from the kingdom now clearly understand that moving goods westward is a vital interest, but they have options, either through the leader's nation's ports or north through another country or other routes. That hesitation may be slowly breaking down. As reported by various news sources, about 20,000 sailors aboard roughly 3,200 vessels are currently stranded in the waters around the strait. The economic pain is not abstract. It is measured in the daily losses of oil revenues, rising operational costs, and the growing exposure of every Gulf state to unpredictable decisions. According to a construction firm executive, his company has already received inquiries about various pipelines, a discreet but significant signal that serious money is starting to move. Yet the leader's plan is not without its own complications. If the major kingdom formally agrees to route its exports through the leader's nation, it would represent a historic, perhaps seismic political shift in the region. And while the economic incentive is overwhelming, political will in the Gulf does not move in straight lines. As officials from the leader's nation acknowledge, the plan that could reshape the energy map of the 21st century ultimately requires a partner that has not yet said yes. Now, while these three mega projects take shape on the drawing board and in the desert, there is a fourth dimension to this story that cannot be ignored. The infrastructure that is actually working right now today. It is called the East-West Pipeline, and it may be the most underrated piece of energy infrastructure on the planet. Built in 1981 during a previous major war, the last time the strait faced a serious disruption, this pipeline runs 1,200 kilometers across the full width of the major kingdom, from a processing complex in the eastern province to a Red Sea port. It was designed to give the kingdom breathing room during a crisis. No one designed it to carry the kingdom's full export load indefinitely, but that is exactly what it is doing right now. On March 10, 2026, a major energy company executive confirmed on an earnings call that the pipeline was approaching its full capacity of 7 million barrels per day. It hit that milestone on March 11th. According to data published by business magazines and industry journals, crude exports via the Red Sea port have now reached approximately 5 million barrels per day, supplemented by an additional 700,000 to 900,000 barrels per day of refined petroleum products. Maritime tracking data reported a 330% surge in Red Sea port exports compared to pre-war levels, with 27 very large crude carriers lined up at the terminal. As one regional news outlet noted, this is why oil prices, while elevated and painful, have not yet reached the catastrophic levels of a full supply shock. But here is the critical number. Before the war, the strait was carrying approximately 15 to 20 million barrels per day of petroleum. The East-West pipeline, even at maximum capacity, can replace at best a fraction of that. As an International Energy Agency assessed, available bypass capacity across all alternative routes stands between 3.5 and 5.5 million barrels per day. That leaves a gap of more than 10 million barrels per day, structurally unbridgeable by existing infrastructure and growing more costly every day. The blockade holds. There is another trap inside the solution. As an energy consultant told a regional news outlet, maximizing the pipeline for crude means abandoning its previous role carrying natural gas liquids and products. If the East-West pipeline is converted to carry all of the kingdom's crude oil exports to the Red Sea, then it cannot also carry natural gas or products. The result is what one chief analyst called a distillate crisis, a jet fuel and diesel emergency, especially acute in Europe. Roughly 30% of Europe's diesel imports and half its jet fuel imports came from the Middle East entering 2026. No pipeline carries those. They can only leave the Gulf by sea. And sea right now is exactly what the nation that closed the strait controls. Another Gulf state, for its part, has not been idle. An existing pipeline running 380 kilometers from an oil field in its interior to a port on the Gulf of Oman allows that nation to export roughly 1.5 million barrels per day entirely outside the strait. This pipeline was built precisely for this contingency. When combined with the major kingdom's east-west pipeline exports, the total alternative bypass capacity reaches approximately 6 to 9 million barrels per day. A meaningful buffer, but still far short of what the world needs. Here is where the danger lives inside the solution. Redirecting the kingdom's exports to the Red Sea does not eliminate vulnerability. It relocates it. As a senior fellow at a policy center told a regional news outlet, all that infrastructure is still exposed to drones, and the oil leaving the Red Sea port going to Asia has to pass through the southern Red Sea choke point. The armed group in that southern region remains capable. The southern gate of the Red Sea remains contested. The major kingdom has, in the words of one analyst, solved one choke point problem by creating exposure to another. This is the geometry of the crisis, as it stands today. A partial solution working hard to prevent complete collapse. A global economy running on emergency infrastructure built 40 years ago for a shorter war. And 3 audacious mega projects racing against time and politics to build something permanent. Which brings us to the question that the nation which closed the strait must be asking right now. Will it simply watch as the world engineers its way around the blockade? The answer almost certainly is no. Its track record with asymmetric strategy is long and sophisticated. In 2019, drones struck a major oil processing facility in the heart of the major kingdom in an attack that temporarily took 5% of global supply offline in a single night. In the years since, kamikaze drones have become cheaper, faster, and more accurate. The development road's railway lines pass through territory where aligned militias have shown both capability and willingness to strike. The pipeline proposal through the leader's nation, if it ever advances, will generate a response that goes well beyond diplomatic protest. Rather than engaging in direct warfare, that nation may attempt to sever these new land-based arteries using asymmetric methods, just as it has done at sea. Long-range drones capable of crossing borders, cyber attacks on pipeline management systems, sabotage operations carried out through proxy forces. These are not hypothetical threats. They are the documented toolkit of a regime that has spent 4 decades turning geography into leverage. And yet, despite all of this, despite the risks, the mountains, the politics, and the proxies, the machinery of global capital has already made its decision. The signatures on the Development Road Agreement belong to 4 nations. The financing conversations behind the Mediterranean pipeline involve the financial centers of 3 continents. The engineering firms already receiving pipeline inquiries are not waiting for peace to break out. They are building contingencies inside the conflict. As one regional news outlet observed, constructing a second overland pipeline would be faster, cheaper, and more strategically sound than almost any other option. The conversations are happening now. The budgets are being approved. History has a pattern here. Every time a power has attempted to permanently control a choke point, the world has eventually built around it. Gibraltar, Suez, Malacca. Each one seemed at its moment of maximum leverage like an unbreakable lock. Each one became less relevant as capital, engineering, and political will combined to create alternatives. The Strait of Hormuz is not different in kind. It is different only in the timing. Consider what has already shifted in just the past few weeks. The major kingdom's east-west pipeline, a 40-year-old emergency asset, is now carrying the weight of global energy stability on its steel backbone. According to business magazines, crude exports via the Red Sea port have reached 5 million barrels per day. The pipeline hit its full 7 million barrel capacity on March 11, 2026, a number that had never been tested at sustained flows in its entire history. That is an engineering achievement under wartime conditions. And it is only the beginning. The development road has 63 kilometers of asphalt already laid. The new port is nearing completion, designed to become the largest container port in the region. An entire telecommunications network contracted with a state firm is being woven into the corridor to serve international logistics companies. The Development Bank is funding railway modernization. The International Road Transport Union has officially welcomed the host nation into the Global Transport Convention. These are not gestures. These are the foundations of a system, and the pipeline proposal through the leader's nation, however politically complicated, has placed on the table an energy corridor concept that 3 years ago would have been laughed out of any diplomatic gathering. The fact that Gulf states are now openly studying it tells you everything you need to know about how radically the calculations have shifted. The world is not waiting for the nation that closed the strait to blink. It is building the infrastructure that will make the blink irrelevant. There is one more dimension to this story that does not get enough attention. It is the human dimension. Those 20,000 sailors stranded in the strait, the aviation fuel running short in European airports, the diesel trucks sitting idle at distribution centers from one major region to another, the farmers who cannot price their inputs because fertilizer costs have gone parabolic, the manufacturers who have stopped taking orders because they do not know when their components will arrive. The second project, the development road, is the most advanced and the most immediately consequential. Steel and asphalt are already on the ground. Financing is agreed. International institutions are invested. When fully operational, this corridor will give the Gulf a land-based route to Europe that no navy can blockade and no mine can close.